Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, this is one of our infinite series of language completeness and consistency meetings about Wolfram Language. And we have a variety of things here that look a little bit on the detailed side, but we'll take a look and see what's happening. Okay, second argument to head. That is an erstwhile long-running function. And how could it have never had a second argument and be getting one now? Let's see what it does. It's a holding argument and things. Is that right?
Yes.
So we can do this here, but we can't do it. We can do it for extract, and we can't do it for. By the way, it's a little bit strange that this doesn't refer to extract. And arguably, head should also refer to things like curry, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. We were discussing yesterday about using examples of curry in this page.
Okay. Can I edit this page or not?
You can edit this page.
Okay, so we probably should mention extract here, shouldn't we?
Yes.
And we should probably mention curry. And we should arguably mention construct as well.
Right.
And I don't have any problem with that. Let's assume that's okay. Right? Defuturize that.
Okay.
I think we should point out the fact that expressions have their head typically already evaluated. So this is going to be useful in the case in which the first argument to head is passed with unevaluated around.
I see.
Which is important in typesetting, and that's why Itai and other people doing typesetting want it. And I understand that. But it's a relatively strange case.
I see. Right. Boy, does this have no details here?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, you should absolutely point that out. Otherwise, it's completely obscure.
Right.
It's a bit strange mixing like part extraction with a replacement, though, isn't it? In the same head is like part of expression, comma 0. And that's like replace head, the second one.
No, it's not. It wraps the result with H. So it takes the result, which might otherwise explode, because, do you get what I'm saying, Mark?
Right. There are futurized examples if you want to, look at something concrete.
Right. That's the relevant example, right? Because that holds that head. Otherwise, what would happen is the inverse function of sine would evaluate.
Exactly.
Right. See that, Mark?
Yeah, but it doesn't just hold the head, it holds the whole expression.
No, it doesn't. It extracts the head structurally and then holds the because that of 1 hasn't been put in there. This is a corner case, okay? But if it's useful, it's useful, and let's do it. Okay, it's distinctly a corner case. Okay, anything more to say about this? Nope. Okay. Is it actually consistent with what happens with things like first? We're doing the second argument is then and if it doesn't have that element, do this, right?
Right.
But nothing can be without its head, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Head versus part 0. Oh my gosh. You know, somebody's making a lot of noise there. If you could not do that, that would be great. Okay.
So, I mean, I explained how we got here, right? So, I mean, this is arguably consistent with the documentation, right? If part extracts the specified parts rather than the parts.
I agree. I agree. Those first two don't seem obviously horrifying. Okay, so the numeric array ones I can't comment on. Because I don't know okay, what is the question here?
Well, the question is, which way, I mean, do we want to extend the sparse array behavior to all list types, or do we want head to, or do we want to change part 0
I don't know.
like head?
I don't think the latter. I think this is good, but I don't know how many of these list-like things there are. And I don't know, without looking at each one, I don't know exactly what should be done there.
Right. So basically the list is sparse array, structured array currently returns unevaluated, but presumably should behave the same as sparse array. And then...
What do you mean structured array returns unevaluated?
I mean that if you try to compute part of 0 of a symmetrized array or a quantity array, it will yell at you and return unevaluated, which is a bug.
That's wrong. Yeah, that's just wrong. Okay, so that's this thing, and then if I now say here, if I give a particular element,
right? But if you put 0 in there, then it will yell. Or I guess just silently return unevaluated.
Yeah, I think that's wrong.
Yes.
I think that should be an as-if list result.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I think it is a little weird to break and we should make sure the documentation is clear on, and makes the footnote about these cases. But I think it's okay that head is a structural thing and 0. I mean, it's a little weird, but
right.
I mean, this behavior is not useful.
Correct.
Right. So, I mean, my point of view, unless somebody objects violently to this, I think that the status quo for sparse array is okay.
Okay.
And it should be extended. Anybody object violently to that?
I mean, why is list a reasonable answer for the 0th part of sparse array? I mean, a list isn't even an array. It's ragged representation, representation.
But because it's the as-if, the sparse array is behaving as if it is its normal. Right?
It's potentially confusing in comparison with pattern matching. So that is not going to match underscore list.
That's true.
So I think
these are two different notions.
To be more consistent to just admit it's a sparse array object, even in part 0.
These are two different notions.
Non-zero subpart. I mean, let me point out in terms of pattern matching, if I say, I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, that's an argument to not do this, to have that return sparse array. Now, why do we feel strongly that should return list?
I don't know that anybody feels strongly that it should return list. I'm just saying this is, I think, how we got into this situation.
All right. Well, let's look at the other case, the case where the 0 thing there returns sparse array. Now, the slippery slope there is clearly any non-zero part extractor returns I mean, is there a heads option? So here's where it could get really funky, right? I mean, if I say level, if I say level of that, comma 1, for example, I don't even understand that at all. I don't understand that at all.
Perhaps you need heads, true?
No, but I'm not looking for the head. I'm looking for the I'm looking for just anything that has. Okay, I'm completely confused by that. Because this is, if we unsparsify this, well, okay, so what is that? That is that, and if we unsparsify it, will be just that list. So I'm assuming that the level says null because it's somehow a no entry object.
I mean, it is Atom Q.
Okay.
Although then that's, sort of weird with the part stuff. So maybe ignore that. Or maybe it's just more weird.
That's it. I know it's more weirdness. Okay, look. This seems to be, to me, right, because that's doing a match to the head. What this does seems a bit undefined.
Right, and I do have the example of down below of if you take part 1 of a matrix sparse array, then you get a sparse array out. So, we could.
Well, what would you have get out? No, you can't get out. I mean, that would kind of suggest that what you should get, but if you go to 2 levels there,
then you'll get a number.
So what do you conclude from that?
Well, I guess what I conclude from this is that we don't literally return exactly what the normal representation would return, right? So it wouldn't be crazy to return sparse array, but so for example, if we then did 1 0, right?
Listen, we're shooting in the dark here. We don't know, because first of all, let's inventory all the functions that this affects. Okay, for which I'm understanding structured array and symmetrized array will be 2 others, right? Are there any others than those?
So the ones this currently affects are sparse array, symmetrized array, quantity array, numeric array, and byte array.
Byte array?
Yes.
What the heck does byte array do with this? If I say byte array of range 10, and then I say that sub 4, oh wow, I didn't know that worked. So, okay, %173 sub 0. Oh, that's just weird. That's just weird. Okay, my head is spinning, so to speak. I don't know what to do here.
Okay, well then
let's get an inventory of all of these things, and then let's try to think through. You've brought up pattern matching, right? Things like level and heads. Go ahead.
Another thing is the new allowed heads, which does separate sparse array from list. So I think it's again consistent to be explicit and return sparse array when extracting the 0 part of a structure.
Wait. So what's allowed heads being used for?
The dimensions and
transpose.
That's a good example. That's a good reason. Look, we need more of an inventory of what the different sort of stakeholders in this are. Okay, that's a good reason to do. So look, anything that is a head-related operation, so to speak, we should be worried about how this plays. And allowed heads is a good argument for having to making sure that this thing, at least for its head, returns its genuine head, so to speak. Right?
Right. Because it does distinguish list from sparse array.
Right. But so now the question is, what depends on the zero there, and where do we use that zero thing? Right? Where do we use part zero? Are there situations like level, for example? I mean, what I think uses part zero implicitly is map with, heads goes to true. But the fact is that maps doesn't go anywhere with these things, right? Map doesn't do anything with these. They're atomic.
Well, map works with sparse arrays and structured arrays. It will normalize if necessary.
Well, let's take a look. I mean, so you're saying that if I say map what the heck?
Right.
Okay.
So,
oh boy. Well, that's a good argument, I claim, for the head being list of thing zero. Well, let's see what happens if I say map. This is the test. Map of F onto that sparse array. This is going to tangle itself up. Heads goes to true. Okay, so for some reason, it ignored the head.
Can you do map at 0?
Yeah, I'll do that. I don't know what to make of that. Well, except that really supports the idea that element 0 is list, but maybe it is list there because it didn't extract of the 0th element and it saw that it was list. In other words, this is clearly connected to part 0 of the sparse array, the behavior here. And it's consistent with that behavior, I think. Well,
right.
I don't know how consistent. Yeah, it's sort of consistent with that behavior.
Yep.
All right, listen. It's looking to me like I'm provisionally going to say that I think the behavior that it has, at least with sparse array, is correct with the 0 element thing, with that being list. And I think that might be true for all the other star array type functions. But really, we need to know what all the stakeholders are, what are all the functions that could interact with this. Heads, allowed heads, map at, all those kinds of things. But that would be my provisional conclusion.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And
okay. Oh my gosh. Why isn't that a 0-length byte array?
Well, so one answer is that
honestly, I think this is wrong. I think it should be a 0-length byte array because I think that, for example, when you do byte array to string, that'll just be a null string. I think this is wrong.
Okay.
Yes, there we go. You're saying this.
Here's another argument why it should work.
What do you mean by that?
Because we accept byte array as type for libraries to pass into the library directly. But I cannot pass a null string, a 0-length array, which is a useful thing.
Why not? You mean you want to be able to pass it? Yeah, I agree. You want to be able to pass it.
Yeah.
So I think this is just a bug.
Okay. But then it's not really well. So Rob was supposed to be here. I don't know why this meeting was scheduled if he can't be here.
Can we please try to find him? Can somebody find him?
Yeah, I've tried reaching out to him. I'll keep
and
doing
that. But
call his cell phone.
the
Okay, what does Rob have an objection? Oh God, what is this? Would be a big project to make this work?
yes,
Why?
because right now there's only one empty list anywhere, and which is S-null list. And so basically anywhere that we currently allow arrays of various kinds to go through will now need to be prepared for an empty array, which is not an empty list. Right? There's no empty packed array. There's no empty sparse array.
Okay, listen, this is a bug. I don't know how hard it is to fix it, but this is a bug.
I think Itai's talking about all of those cases, not just the byte array case. An empty numeric array, an empty symmetrized array, and an empty sparse array.
I think that's
was,
yeah. Go ahead.
There was an argument that other arrays, they may be rectangular, so they have more than one dimension, and of zero length, it's not quite clear what it should be. But byte array is always one-dimensional. And
well, this one, okay, so if I do this and I say it's a 0 by 0 array, what should that be? In other words, is the 0 by 0 array different from the just single length 0? And the answer better be yes.
Yeah, because it would have different rank.
Yeah.
Except we've never had a concept of anything other than the innermost dimension being 0.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
so if you did 1 0 there, you'd get a list containing an empty list.
I understand. But that's different from a 0 by 0 array.
Sure, if we were to grant the existence of such a thing.
Okay, look, so Rob has a point of view about this, is that correct? Other than the point of view that, oh, this is hard. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, what the behavior you're showing here is a bug. The question of whether there should be 0 by 0 arrays, I think that the logical chain that we have will lead to that.
You think this is a bug for all of these array types?
I feel less strongly about it for everything other than byte array.
Okay. Right. So
I think it's a baguette for these other things. I think for byte array, it is a full-fledged bug.
Right, which is, I guess, just another indication that byte array isn't really an array.
That's true.
And so we probably should have called it byte array.
What would you have called it?
Byte vector.
Yeah, byte vector, byte list, binary. In the WXF documentation, we refer to it as a binary string because it's, basically a
binary string is not clear what it is.
Yeah, it's not clear.
Byte list makes
I don't think byte list is a very good name. I like byte array compared to byte list.
Yeah, it's
so in any case.
Right, I'm just saying it's not really an array in the sense of all of our other arrays.
Okay, fair enough. Which are in fact lists, but by another name. All right. So look, I think the conclusion here, we need Rob if he's going to make a comment about this. Maybe there's a way to do the byte array case more cheaply than all these other ones. I don't really see why this is such a big deal to do the byte array case. I can see these other ones might be a bigger deal.
Not in the kernel necessarily, because there aren't that many cases, but then you have things like library link. Byte array underneath is just a numeric array. So then you need to support it.
Right.
0 length, sending stuff out and in.
Maybe it shouldn't be just numeric array. Maybe we should fork that code.
No, that's the wrong way, Stephen. Honestly, we've been trying to unify packed array, numeric array, byte array to make them all the same. Otherwise, it's unmanageable.
All right. Okay.
And so they have to be unified. I mean, otherwise you just get.
All right. Okay. We don't have the key person here. We don't have Rob here. That was a mistake. That we cannot finish this conversation without him. But my position is that the byte array case is a bug.
Maybe that's because we're trying to unify this. We cannot do this, or it's hard to do.
Okay,
That's
there's
an
nothing
indication.
further to say here. We
Okay.
don't have Rob here. We should find out why we don't have Rob here. We don't have him, so our meeting is sabotaged with respect to this. And
He's on PTO for half of today, so I'm assuming this half.
I tried contacting him in the morning, but still didn't get anything, and I couldn't get hold of
who
him
knows
just
what's going on? Okay.
So this is sort of a really preliminary sort of discussion, but
I don't know what this means. This is
so it's a way of representing a number with a certain type. So in numeric array, we have 8-bit signed integers, floating point 32-bit numbers. But we can represent arrays, but we can't represent a single number with that type in the system. So do we want the numeric array to be the container for that? Or do we want something like a typed number object, or what is the
what are you trying to do? You're trying. Is this a big number, or is this something else?
No, it's a machine number of a specific type that's not an M integer. It's not the largest type, like an M integer, an M real, an M complex. It's a smaller type.
Oh, for goodness sake! What is this for?
It's for the compiler. It's for all sorts of things where you add a number to a numeric array. You want to maintain the type. It's also a limiting case, like there in total, where if total returned an M integer, you've lost the information about the fact that it came from a byte array.
Okay, this is the tip of a giant iceberg, not resolvable on its own. This has to do with keeping internal data representation type information around, for which we actually have this perfectly good typed, blah 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 integer mechanism, right?
In the compiler, yeah.
Yes.
But not around the system in general.
That is correct. That's correct.
So other people like image processing, other people would like to
we're not solving this problem like this, okay? This is a big, to introduce something, I'm not keen on the numeric array thing. I think it's a low-level thing. It's not intended particularly for general users. And it better not show up for general users. I mean, we could go and we could talk about every import-export format could return random typed stuff because it happened to see that what came in was an unsigned integer in some, weird random, representation in the outside world. Oh, let's not put it into an ordinary integer. Let's put it into a weird unsigned, short or something.
Mm-hmm. Which
is not what we want, because we have a giant system that does not deal with these things. And it will, other than in the compiler, we have no way to deal with this stuff, right? So what are we going to do with these? I mean, what are we going to do with them? How many functions are going to support these?
What do we do? Like arithmetic, when we're close to having arithmetic working for numeric array, so you can add them, you can do all the sorts of operations in interpreted level outside the compiler. You can call sign, abs, plus, times, or whatever. So
the things that are in the runtime library for the compiler you can do, right? That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a subsystem of the whole language that is specially made for the runtime library for the compiler. Mm-hmm. Then my statement is have it work through the compiler.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine by me. But I'm just saying there are other people around the company who would want that kind of representation, image processing, etc.
Yeah, then they need to make a case for that. For that. I don't see why they're not storing it in a numeric array. What's wrong with storing it in a numeric array? It's okay. It's a what you're basically saying there is this is what, in fact, it's what you're suggesting here, that this is a numeric array that is simply, I'm a little bit confused by the notation.
It's literally a rank 0 numeric array, right?
Yeah, with no dimensions, exactly. It's a rank 0 numeric array. But we've never done that for packed array, so that's why we want to discuss it with you, Stephen.
But packed array is not a user visible thing.
Sure, but it is a departure, that's all, to have a rank 0 object. So
that is an array.
Mm.
Right. So if we have these numeric arrays which are rank 0, and they're the only ones that can be rank 0, that'll be a little weird too. But
Well, look.
But
what
fine.
this is,
I think the short. I mean, so let me make one comment and one summary. I mean, part of this is, people who are interacting with external libraries via library link or whatever, right? This is sort of an edge case for them, which is, I think, a large part of.
Right. So if they want something which is stored as a list of numbers, right, in our system, that should be treated as a list of bytes for the external library. This is one way to do that, although there will be others. Ethan on our live stream is asking about compile interacting with Sparse Array. I thought Tom told me that that was working now. Function compile interacting with Sparse Array. Is that in fact working, or is that not the case?
I think there were some problems with the Sparse Array data structure changes that we made that we couldn't quite get into this version. So I'm not sure quite.
So they're coming soon. Well,
yeah, I mean it's scheduled. It's definitely scheduled, but I don't know if it's ready.
So there was an issue that the current Sparse Array didn't play nice with the new compilation capabilities.
Yeah, the format of the Sparse Array, we were trying to change that before, having it be compiled or whatever. And there's a problem with changing the format, some of the graph code, etc. So it needs a bit more time.
All right. So look, the concept that there's a representation of an individual number that is relevant for external libraries and so on. I don't know. I mean, I really object to the phrase typed number.
No. I mean, it's just a suggestion. Do we want to do it inside numeric array, which is?
I'm not sure. Not sure. Not sure.
Okay. Well, then I guess the short answer is we need to think about this more. And
I think so. I mean, I think that if you want to get it in somehow, somewhere, put it inside numeric array for now. But whether it should have, for cosmetic reasons, a different head, I'm not sure. Is there anything other than cosmetic reasons for it to have a different head?
It just kind of limits how it can be used. So a lot of the numeric array code at the moment is not prepared for these objects. So it would kind of allow it to be introduced more incrementally. But that's the only reason. If it was a different head, yeah, exactly, because then you'd need to add cases specifically for the object. But like you say, you'd be spilling the object all over the system, so it's not ideal.
Yeah, I don't think it's great. I think we should look at this some more. And I mean, it's a little weird. The numeric array can have any dimension of array in that first argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Can I have a sparse array in the first argument?
No.
Okay. Look, I think this is what you should try to do for now, although I'm not completely certain whether it should have different decoration in the end.
Okay. I mean, internally, it will be that object anyway. So if I make the changes like to the runtime library, etc., then, if it has a different wrapper, that's easy to change later.
Okay, next up, table with symbolic arguments. Well, this is weird.
It's weird, but it was not an accident.
Well, this needs to be fixed with code assistance. I think we need to figure out how to make this work. So let's inventory what the issues are with it. So if we evaluate the second argument, is that problematic? I assume it doesn't evaluate the second argument right now.
Well, it does evaluate it, but it only proceeds if the result is, a number.
But so there's a side effect. So if there's a side effect there, it will evaluate it. So in other words, if I say table of x, comma, print foo 4. Well, that's interesting. Why did it print it twice?
Something to do with the internal implementation details.
Okay, but that's already kind of weird.
Could it have auto-compiled or done something weird like that?
Yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little weird, and we should figure out what's going on.
Oh, wait, that wasn't the second argument. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay, separate branch. I mean, Devin should make a note. Should go track down why that printed twice. But that's a separate issue from.
Right, and
I personally think this should just work. And then we can start building up a calculus of these things so that we can say things like join, I mean, there's some stuff that should work, like join table. I mean, symbolically, I don't see any reason why this.
But it's a bit of a slippery slope because, I mean, like for years, some people have complained part, for example. If you don't give an integer argument and you give a symbolic argument, it gives a message because they wanted a symbolic part representation. So now you do table, you'd also need a symbolic part. Now you'd need symbolic support for operations on these things.
Oh, yes and no. I mean,
right,
does extract work with symbolic things?
No. Right. I mean, just having a table that's symbolic, I mean, right. I mean, on some level, we could just quiet the message, but I mean, what does that accomplish? Right. I mean, we've used an active of table in various places for things like this. But, it needs to be added case by case.
The truth is that this could evaluate, right? To the volume of an n sphere.
Right. Right. So it would be a bunch of one-offs in various functions.
Well, I'm not sure how one-off it is. I mean, this is just another area. Symbolic length lists are just something we've never dealt with yet. But we've known, like we've done some experimental projects on infinite length lists. We just haven't ever, there's a whole calculus of symbolic length lists that we haven't dealt with yet.
So I think there are several parts mixed here, and I have been one of the consumers of symbolic tables in the differentiation of symbolic arrays. There I use inactive of table just because of this message, just to avoid this message. And I think this is a problem separate from evaluation. The main difference, in my opinion, from some product is the message. Exactly as with part. Part also has this message that complains about symbolic second argument. And in the case of part,
okay.
I mean, just to finish this, in the case of part, what we did is going to indexed, which is somehow the symbolic version of part.
Which I'm not a big fan of. I mean,
index might have been avoided if we didn't have the message in part x, n. But that was considered to be too important to remove.
Well, I mean, what you're suggesting then is that instead of table x, n, we have something that's called symbolic list, basically.
Perhaps. At the moment, as I said, I'm using in the symbolic differentiation, and there are examples in D, in the inactive of table.
I mean, the problem I have is context dependent, because if you wrap with around that and give n a value, then it does something different. And
of course it does something different if you give it a value. I mean, many things do different things if you give them a value. I mean, you can, listability is different if you give things a value versus not.
Right. In my opinion, the evaluation issues are a minor thing in comparison with the message.
So what are you proposing?
No, I'm not proposing anything. I'm just explaining the reasons of what we have done so far, which is try to save the message, both in table and in part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly one thing we could do is get rid of the message somehow in certain cases and make table of x, n evaluate to a symbolic list. Am I making sense? And then we have our calculi operating on symbolic list rather than getting tangled in the middle of a table where, I mean, I'm not sure if that's right, but I think the question, which would be a question more for Roger than anybody else, is, what do we think we could do symbolically on arbitrary length lists? And my feeling is we probably do quite a lot of stuff. But I'm a little concerned that a lot of our functions, like join and things, there's a lot of functions that sort of operate on arbitrary headed things and might get fairly confused by being given, I don't know. So, I mean, look, first question is, what could we do with symbolic list? Okay, and then the question is, if it, we need a calculus of symbolic list. If it turns out that we want to attach that to table of n, then we can do that. But the first step is to understand what symbolic list could do. That seem reasonable?
Yep.
A simpler solution might be to support inactive of table and give inactive of table a nice typesetting, which is another thing I'm missing quite a lot.
Okay.
And then, because that's an object that we already promised we could support. And then if that works well,
that's fine. But to work out the calculus of symbolic list, it could as well be a calculus of an inactive table.
Exactly.
But the first step is, what is the calculus of symbolic list? If nothing else, we should put that on the list. Devin, if you can send me a message back, we should put that on the list for maybe I can just do it right now. Put it on the list for the big list of student projects that I maintain. We did a thing for infinite length lists, right?
Yes, I've seen that.
And did we do anything with it?
No. Again, it's either too difficult to support, or if we want to do it well, we need transfinite numbers, because what do you do with joining two of those infinite lists?
I don't know. Isn't the chap who worked on that now working with Johan? I think he is, Luis, if I remember his correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So we could follow up and figure out whether. But okay, to what extent did it already use transfinite numbers or not?
No, what he had didn't use transfinite numbers. But of course, in operations like join, he couldn't proceed.
What do you mean he couldn't proceed? He just has join of an infinite list with an infinite list gives. Why can't you just give an infinite list?
Well, because you have the first few elements of one, and then you have the, so imagine that you have x1, x2, x3 to x infinity, and y1, y2, y3 to y infinity. How do you join those two lists?
How would transfinite numbers help?
Because you can have omega and omega plus 1. Omega is the last infinite of the first list, and omega plus 1 is the first transfinite number of the second list.
Okay, so you're saying you could do part extraction with transfinite numbers. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, the same thing would come up with the symbolic list. If the first was a list of length n, right, and the second one, and it was just the x sub I up to x sub n, then, you know, the omega, using omega there seems to me to be the same as saying consider a symbolic length list, or am I missing something?
Yes, it's more or less the same thing. It's just that with transfinite numbers, you have to be careful with commutativity, because omega plus 1 is not the same thing as 1 plus omega.
I'm aware. I mean, clearly you can do something like say, what's the last element in a length n list, which you can't do in the length omega list.
Right. Yeah, it will be some sort of x omega. Yeah.
What operation? So for example, presumably, if we say what's the length of that list, we'll get aleph 0, yes? Instead of, we'll get a cardinal number instead of an ordinal number if we ask for the length.
Correct. Yeah.
Boy, maybe transfinite numbers, it's only been 130 years. Maybe they'll finally find a use. Maybe.
But those are a particular problem with infinite lists. So in that sense, symbolic lists are simpler, because if we imagine that the lengths are always finite.
I understand. Of course, if you could substitute, and what happens if I say table comma infinity? It'll just give an error, right?
Right. Like if you, presumably, even if you give it 2 to the 65, it'll give you an error.
Why it gives 2 errors, I don't know. That's another bug that should be looked into. Let's look at the stack here.
It won't tell you anything.
Okay. Okay. So, look, I think it will be interesting to look at, yeah, I mean, the infinite length list thing, I don't know whether that's possible to put in the function repository. I don't know how complicated it was. Maybe Devin, could you get that looked into, please?
Yeah, sure.
And then, you know, I think we should ask Roger if he has opinions about symbolic length list calculus. And then that's where we should go with this.
I mean, it's the idea to allow arbitrary length, like a sequence over a finite range. So like table of f of I with I going from 0 to n, or something like that.
That's what we're saying. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yes, that's what we're talking about. For symbolic n.
Yeah.
Summary box data size limit. Okay, the I being itai. I for itai here, is that right?
Indeed.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know that I have, especially since you didn't like any of my suggestions last time around, I didn't spend a great deal of time trying to come up with.
What was your favorite suggestion last time around?
Dollar notebook embedding limit.
I think it should say notebook in it. Do you agree? Do you agree it should say notebook? I think it should, because I think it's where it is, right?
Yep.
Notebook cache size.
Is it a cache?
It's not a cache. It's right. It's the point at which you stop storing the expression in the notebook and give the little button to data not a notebook, store now.
If data is not a notebook, do you recompute it, or where it comes from?
So it's the typesetting does not contain the interpretation. Basically, I mean, technically, it's a tag box with second argument false. So it's in the kernel. What's that?
Is it based on the length or the byte count, or what's the criteria for that?
The byte count. Notebook local storage limit, I'm okay with that.
It seems to, I mean, if one saw that just out in the wild, one would have some idea what it meant.
Yep.
What else do we have that's a star limit type function?
We have the output size limiter, I think it's called.
$output size limit.
Mm-hmm.
What units is that in?
That's also in bytes.
In notebook local storage limit, it's, too many words.
It's a complicated concept.
I think notebook storage limit would work just as well, I think.
I mean, my concern with notebook things is that it starts to sound like it's a limit on the size of the notebook.
That's why local.
No, it suggests that you store it in a notebook also.
Well, if it has the word storage in it.
Maybe dropping local would work.
I don't like that. Notebook storage limit. That could be a million different things.
And
well, how about this?
Okay.
Notebook expression storage limit. How about something like that?
Maybe.
No, that gives a different idea, that you somehow limit the size of the expression that can be shown.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, clearly possibly the winner for all-time longest thing, notebook expression storage size limit, is correct.
Mm-hmm. What about notebook automatic storage size limit? Or automatic storage limit?
I think it's obscure what it's storing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it encompasses more and more things.
How does this relate to persistent value and all the things that talk about, isn't this like a location for a persistent value? Persistence location.
Right. Right, but it doesn't. I mean, it really.
Right. Unfortunately, this is one of these things where if we know what it's talking about, then when you see the name, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But if you don't have any idea what it's talking about and you see one of these names, it's like utterly obscure. I think, honestly, of these, that this one here has the best emotional tenor, so to speak, given that you're not going to understand it. Put local storage limit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what this is it's an in notebook. What would we call that? Notebook. I mean, it's an inline thing, right?
Right. So if you do like, I know, sparse array of.
No, but I'm thinking about these names. Notebook inline storage limit. Inline sounds very 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. No, I actually like this name.
I think I like inline better than local.
Yeah, yeah.
With local, I tend to think of, like local versus cloud or something.
Yes, whereas this is, this strongly suggests that it's inside the notebook.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, a comment from our live stream from Ethan, who says he discovered that he had 23 gigabytes of local and resource objects and would like some management interface. And I agree that that would be desirable. I mean, at the very least, system information should give that information. Somebody's got a loose connection there. Notebook inline storage limit.
I think that's the best one. Right, because it really is in line in the sense of, the expression can appear sort of anywhere, right? It's not like output size limit, which is limiting the whole output. It's, the objects that opt into this.
All right, okay, fine. All right, let's go for notebook inline storage limit for now. Okay, I want to talk about this question about the management of local resources and how you know how big they are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first thing is they should be in system information. You've got some bizarre seashore, something or other. So what is that bizarre noise? It's either you or it's Brett.
My headset has a separate mute.
Ah, okay. So I don't think you're by the seashore, but we're hearing like what you hear, but you put I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Well, now it's okay. When you talk, it's okay, but otherwise we're hearing.
Are you hearing the fan of my desktop, maybe?
No, because I think that when you're not talking is when we hear it. When you are talking, we don't hear it. Maybe it's got some automatic gain control. Anyway, it's really annoying.
Okay, well, I'll be as muted as possible then.
Okay, but okay, listen, how are we going to get something where you can manage, I mean, like local objects, where are the places where you can be storing things? In persistence locations? I mean, does the persistence location, does one of these go into the local object store? Somebody know?
Local is, but we'd really need Roman.
Okay, let's put on our agenda for either ILD or LCC. For goodness sake, you got to fix this stupid audio problem. That for one of those two, having functions that manage the size of local objects and other persistence locations, because discovering that you have 50 gigabytes of stuff stored in the cloud to persist something that you're doing, it will be good to know that. Right? So to me, okay, my suggestion would be, first step is it goes in system information. Second step, there might be some custom functions to discover this stuff and to manage it. And for example, to delete things in the local object store, although I don't know exactly what you can delete there. I don't know whether the local object store is segmented into things which say they're caches and things that don't. That's another thing we should be discussing. Okay, so that's an agenda for a different meeting, I think. Yeah, Ethan is saying unification of size limits would be nice, like output size, cloud object size, dataset displayed rows. Yeah, well, at least we're calling them star limit types of things. I don't know what dataset displayed rows.
I mean, that's some secret option that just controls, how many rows you see.
No, I understand that, but I think we're making that be a non-secret option, and we should check with Chris that it is a star limit named option. I think there's a dollar version of it, which we'll want to have. Okay, not something people in this meeting know. Let us pick this up again, both the management of persistence locations and the naming of these limits. I'm concerned that one approach to this is to have some kind of giant dashboard of system options that control all this, but I don't think that really helps us.
We also have some $max star related to them.
Yeah.
Aren't those mostly describing variables as opposed to settable variables? Like, max machine integer and things like that?
Could be. I don't know of a strict difference between them.
All right. I think we should wrap up here, but we've got a separate piece to take to a different meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. I'm a fan of your new lack of a fan, Itai. We're not hearing any background noise, so I don't know what was going on there.
Okay, not because I haven't really changed anything, but glad to hear it's gone.
Something completely different. Okay, good stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you to people on live. Oh, there was a complaint from Ethan on the live stream about limit failing for some limit of an RSOL value failing. That should be looked at if Devin can pick that up and feed that to the right people.
Sure.
That would be me and Devendra.
Okay. Okay, good stuff. All right, see you guys soon. Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, bye, everyone.